This video was originally uploaded yesterday, but was falsely removed citing YouTube's self-harm policies. Even though everything was censored and what they were detecting specifically had nothing to do with that kind of violation. This video is created for awareness, as well as document reported abuse that YouTube themselves has failed to act on, and does not go against YouTube's guidelines in any way. I can't believe I need to say this, but if YouTube is going to be so inconsistent that they remove my video but allow these predators to remain on the platform, that's something I need to make known up front. That said, this video does have mentions of such topics, but I've been as careful as I can, and try to avoid excessive detail. Here's your cue to leave if you can't handle that kind of heavy discussion. It's for your own sake. Hey, Ethan again. Hi. This is part 2 of 3 to my previous video discussing Wixtener, one of the adults who targeted me for 4 years since I was 12. This video is about the two main people that Wixtener teamed up with to harass me for this prolonged period, but I've decided to have them be in the same video given that they've both had a somewhat more consistent pattern of behavior than Wixtener, and are therefore easier to summarize. These two people are named Aiko and Senchou, at least, that's what I've been calling them this whole time despite all their name changes over the years. From what I can recover from an old video by another victim, the situation with Aiko was happening since before December 18th of 2022 when I was 13. Throughout 2023 and 2024, Aiko would send real images depicting self-harm wounds to me and other young boys ranging from 12 to 16 via her YouTube posts and likely other means, and would frequently change the pings on these posts to reach other kids, but it was mainly my friends who she'd target. This came with threats of doxing and sexual assault, while she knew that many of the boys she was targeting had been victimized in the past. This was where I actually stepped in despite already dealing with harassment from Wixtener. Many of these boys she'd harass would attempt harm on themselves over Aiko and I had to talk them out of it constantly, while Aiko would claim the wounds shown in the photos were her own, and that quote, "it was a gift," which sparked my concern for her well-being and was why I was trying to be patient with her in earlier disputes. She'd also have this weird pattern where she'd apologize publicly, then just to continue doing what she was doing weeks later as if she'd said nothing in the first place, likely as a means of trolling the fuck out of those 13-year-olds she drove to extreme reactions. A lot of her older behavior could fall into this exact cycle, and it was this time where she claimed the age of 18, or, 17 and 51 weeks as she said. My attempts to talk her out of potentially harming herself was the next thing to get me targeted, and throughout late 2023 to early 2024 she'd just be lusting over me. All the while the Senchou situation was emerging behind the scenes. I didn't respond to most of Aiko's posts as I learned, oh wait, she's looking for attention, but that only seemed to egg her on more and make her drop a lot of her victims over time to pursue me over the others. The posts would escalate into mockery of unrelated vent posts, telling me to commit suicide, pulling the classic move of saying that my dad was rotting in hell, spiritually abusive remarks, and even making necrophilic remarks about me to outsiders. Obviously this would cause some pretty significant distress to a 13-14-year-old, and this was also around the time when I was starting to show escalating symptoms of stress cardiomyopathy, so the strain was not just mental, it was physical too. As I mentioned, Senchou was starting to harass me while all this was going on, so let's talk about her. My feud with Senchou began around the same time as Aiko's harassment did, when she claimed to be 14 and I was 13. At the time, I was in a petty argument over YouTube with someone named Mist, just two kids beefing on the net for dumb reasons. Senchou, who was a fan of Mist, would announce herself via YouTube comments, promising to make the harassment towards Mist stop despite neither of us harassing one another, before virtually jumping me with xenophobic remarks over me being of Welsh origin, and would harass my friends for, well, being my friends. And to be completely real, I expected a lot more sheepshagger remarks, but instead she'd throw the Queen of England's death at me, as if that's even fucking relevant to begin with. Not the last time either of these two would go for dead people though. Still, I let her trauma dump in my DMs without judgment until she apologized a few months later, to which I'd accept and invite her to be friends since we both enjoyed drawing. That was short-lived though. In late 2023 she'd turn on me under the name 𝗘𝘁𝗵𝗪 because she was upset that I didn't side with her in an unrelated drama with someone named Smokey, and she'd go public in March of 2024 with petty insults and other really nasty shit, such as mocking the death of my dad as well as then recent death of one of my dogs, and more of the usual xenophobia. This would even escalate to her sharing a drawing made by her friend, a questionably inaccurate depiction of Ethan Williams, my persona, committing suicide, which particularly hurt given that I'd struggled with chronic suicide suicidal ideation since my single digits, and specifically wrote my persona's story to reflect that. This was around the time she claimed the names 𝗘𝘁𝗵, Senchou would use multiple alternate channels, the first of which being meant to represent the world's worst subspecies of human, a 4chan LARPer. I didn't even need her upfront admission, I already knew from the typing style that it was her. She'd make graphic sexual remarks against my clear lack of consent, joke about me hypothetically being groomed by people I had personal issues with, and post videos obsessing with the idea of me committing suicide, confirming in private that it was her intent to drive me to that point from the beginning. That beginning being her butting into a drama she wasn't involved in, and trying to force me to do the same the year after. Suddenly that warrants a 14-year-old to be driven to suicide over the span of nearly a year by this point. And the graphic content being made of me didn't end there. On Serious Hat 4 she'd announced that she drew sexual gore-sent imagery of my character and posted it to 4chan. Her even being on that website was worrying to the point that I didn't want to fact-check. But her saying she'd make such content of me was enough to trigger a pretty strong heart attack if you know what I mean. Meanwhile, Aiko sent others after me, mainly kids that she groomed, as a means of public harassment, while private intimidation was another thing she'd used during August of 2024. By this point I would feel shaky at even hearing something that sounded like her name, but didn't tell anyone because of how scared I was, and this would only worsen in September of 2024, when Aiko and Senchou became friends. Around my 15th birthday, September 7th of 2024, Senchou introduced 2 new alts called 𝗘𝘁𝗵𝗵 and 𝗘𝘁𝗵𝗵. Other than lying about me and obsessively posting about me alongside her main, these accounts didn't do much other than make some pretty interesting compliments. Which I mean thanks I guess. Who wouldn't be flattered to hear that? But it was on September 9th where shit started getting real. On that day Senchou would mass post about me on all of her accounts with necrophilic remarks about me and my father, and for the first time, I saw her and Aiko directly interacting on each other's posts. But let me draw your attention to this one here. This comment in particular gave Senchou the bright idea of suggesting making a quote-unquote fanfiction depicting me in necrophilic acts with my father, and I think you can see where this is going. If not, then to put it simply, Aiko followed through and made a written depiction of me, a minor, engaging in sexual acts with my deceased father, but not before writing biblical chapters worth of spiritually abusive remarks and excuses for creating aggravated CSAM. This was only the first of many cases of Aiko making this kind of content of me, which gained praise from Senchou, and was followed by a drawn depiction by Wixtener which I mentioned in the previous video. Aiko would claim that she was nearly monetarily paid for this content as she began making more, all the while telling me, quote, "Cry, because I'll make more fanfictions about you and your situation to normalize it." This was a 19-year-old woman saying this to a now 15-year-old boy, and I was the one genuinely thinking I was fucking psychotic. On October 23rd that same year I made another attempt on my own life, which kinda failed given that I'm still here. This was around the time I actually started trying to get help, but that only worsened things and made me more self-reliant. All the while I was forcing myself to stay alive in some delusional hope that someone, anyone, would take me seriously. And I'll forgive you for thinking the abuse stopped there, because it didn't. Throughout 2025 it was pretty much the same but worse, with more and more harassment from Senchou, now under the name 𝗘𝘁𝗵𝗵, and Aiko following up on her threats to make more CSAM of me. Senchou would constantly infantilize herself by claiming to be 13, as if anyone could give one luck of a fuck when you're actively trying to speedrun the registry you're somehow still not on. However, just before this long year worth of escalating harassment, fellow YouTuber 𝗘𝘁𝗵𝗵 uploaded a video on my situation on September 25th of 2024, which I'll forever be grateful for. Senchou and Wixtener saw this, and Senchou began making posts claiming to be getting therapy under the alt account 𝗘𝘁𝗵𝗪, before cranking that Soulja Boy and stomping all over what she'd done with a 2-liner apology, a little tiddlywink of a sorry she farted out that was clearly faked from the other posts she made 4 fucking lines ago. Senchou would dedicate many posts throughout the following days to pretending she feels bad for what she did, and guilt-tripping with, "How sad and melancholic my worldview is, I see what you did there," and would mention attempts. I won't try to speculate what kind of attempts these were, but what I will say is that she was alive and well enough to tell me that my self-harm struggles, which she was a big factor of, were not her problem. Even on January 1st of 2025 Senchou was threatening her own life if I didn't take down what documentation I had on her, despite also making posts like this simultaneously, along with posting a vague Twitter thread not even addressing how she had a hand in literal child abuse, and would tell conflicting stories about me on Discord. At the same time this was happening, Aiko was somehow still coming up with ideas for more graphic non-consensual content, and entered this repetitive loop in October of 2025 where she'd quote, "come back for me," announcing herself like she was the second coming, while also engaging in this weird mother-son type shit with me, the child she was still actively sexually abusing, much alike how Wixtener claimed to be my father. After November 30th of 2025, it all went quiet, until New Year's Day of 2026. I came home from a long night out to Aiko sharing a post I made on Christmas, super petty to see on such a massive event. 2 days later she'd make another post with another concept for a graphic written depiction of me and my father. By this point I had a lot of built-up emotions that I avoided expressing, and it boiled over into a one-off post I made directly addressing how inhumane all of this was, leading to another confrontation. Aiko would use further creation of abusive material to try to blackmail me into private contact throughout February of 2026, alongside publishing Google documents of graphic content just to scare me, which by now is failing since I'm genuinely growing desensitized to this abuse with how normal it is. During this new period of Aiko's harassment, from this January till the present, Senchou returned under the alias Mary on January 19th, and tried to coerce me too. It started again when she pinged me, and another friend of mine who she harassed in 2023. Her first move was calling me a homophobic twat, regurgitating an existing pattern of calling me homophobic over reacting negatively to abuse, and 1 hour later she would claim that she'd actually stopped harassing me 3 years ago. I'm sure that claim is supported by the evidence I just fucking showed. After making false claims of me being an adult myself, and a whole bunch of other interesting comments, I dropped one of my own where I immediately shut that lie down. When she tried to contact someone's Discord account thinking it was me, I told her off once more and called her gaslighting out for what it was in another comment confrontation. She'd respond by saying that she was gonna make fan art of a pairing between two of my characters, Ethan and Florence Williams, a character from my personal projects who most of my audience isn't familiar with. While the pairing itself is canon and okay, the person it was coming from was not, and she'd go full mask off when she used child sexual abuse terms on Florence, and brought an 11-year-old character of mine into the mix. Given my history with my characters being sexualized against my consent and shipped in horrible ways, plus her ties with Wixtener who did this exact thing, naturally I wanted her to stay the fuck away from my characters, and thankfully, since January 23rd, I haven't heard from her. However, that's very likely to change after this video is uploaded. That brings us to the present. No time quite like it. Here is a good time to mention that earlier, I said that Aiko's harassment from New Year's Day has persisted until now. As of March 3rd, which is today as of writing this file is still talking all kinds of wild to me and is publicizing more abusive content via Google Docs. This just further drives my point from posts I made prior to this video, that these two people cannot stop talking about me. Even if I disengage and avoid them for as long as I can, they keep escalating and going to actual criminal levels of harassment with not just me, but other victims as well. That's why I want to state that this video is probably my most urgent out of this tyranny trilogy. These people will not stop. They are actively searching for new victims. They are still after me with barely any provocation to warrant such egregious levels of harassment. And man, secondary victimization always hits hard too. Any kind of algorithm boost would be appreciated for not just this video, but this situation in general, which I've got both a document and this playlist on. It's all still going. I've needed help for years now, and nothing has been done, but there's still a third video regarding this situation that I need to get out, so I'll see you then. 10-3